Welcome back, everyone. Today's explainer takes a look at a massive and frankly surprising clash unfolding right now all across Europe. On one hand, we've got an absolute explosion in modern, innovative dining culture. But on the other, we have government policy that, well, seems to be living in a completely different century. We're going to break down the expectation versus the reality of Europe's food scene and uncover the hidden subsidies that are quietly shaping exactly what ends up on your plate.
Okay, let's dive right into this. If you take a culinary tour across Europe today, you're going to see a continent that is fully embracing a vibrant plant-based future. The food scene right now is practically mouth-watering. And we aren't just talking about a sad-side salad here. We're talking about an explosive revolution where vegetables, legumes, and grains are totally taking center stage. From bustling street markets to the most exclusive dining rooms, chefs are treating plant-based ingredients with a level of respect and creativity that is completely transforming how Europeans eat.
And you can see this transformation playing out perfectly at literally both ends of the dining spectrum. In fine dining, vegetables have truly gone haute cuisine. Take Gioia in Milan, for example. They're a stalwart of the scene and actually became the first vegetarian restaurant in Europe to win a Michelin star. And they've retained it ever since, serving up these incredibly complex biodynamic dishes that prove you definitely don't need meat for luxury. But hey, this isn't just for the elite. Down at the street level, you have lively, fun eateries like Madre in Amsterdam. It's a modern Mexican spot completely invested in veganism, doing incredible things like chipotle mole cauliflower wings and achiote potato tostadas.
This shift is even being championed by the absolute legends of the culinary world. Just look at Alain Passard, the chef behind Arpège in Paris, which recently snagged the number 45 spot on the world's 50 best restaurants list. He famously said, "I want to elevate the humble vegetable to a grand cru." And he really isn't just talking. Decades ago, he virtually eliminated animal products from his cooking, relying instead on a massive 17-acre organic kitchen garden to supply his kitchen. In fact, today, pretty much the only animal product you'll spot on his menu is honey, straight from his own beehives.
Because of this whole culinary renaissance, travelers are literally planning their trips just to eat. Looking ahead to 2026, cities like Berlin have become undisputed capitals of this movement, serving up incredible, fully plant-based Vietnamese pho loaded with tofu and bok choy. Over in London, Borough Market is just overflowing with vegan stalls doing everything from artisan nut butters to wild mushroom arancini. Amsterdam has perfected the vegan stroopwafel, updating a beloved cultural staple for a modern diet. And down in Athens, tourists are realizing that traditional Greek cuisine is already packed with naturally plant-rich dishes, like slow-cooked gigantes beans and fava. So, looking at this incredible boom in restaurants and travel, you would naturally assume that European government policy is right there behind it, right? Funding and supporting this green, plant-based future? Well, let's pump the brakes for a second. Because the reality of how the European Union actually spends your tax euros tells a completely different and, honestly, pretty staggering story. To really understand this, we need to look at a comprehensive new document called the Foodrise EU Report. This report neutrally evaluates the Common Agricultural Policy, or the CAP. Now, the CAP is one of the largest single allocations of the entire EU budget, distributing billions of euros in subsidies. Right now, the EU is making crucial decisions on how to distribute these funds for the 2028 to 2034 period. But to understand where we're going, the report analyzes exactly how these billions in tax euros were distributed recently, back in 2020. And this breakdown brilliantly illustrates the massive divide between the culture and the policy. In 2020, an estimated 77% of all EU Common Agricultural Policy subsidies went toward animal-sourced foods. Only 23% went toward plant-based foods. Think about that. The heavily meat-reliant system of the past is receiving more than 3 times the financial support of the plant-based foods that are actually driving culinary innovation across the continent right now.
Let's put a hard number on that. 77%. 39 billion euros. In just a single year, 39 billion euros of taxpayer money was spent propping up the production of meat and dairy. To give you some context on just how massive that is, that 39 billion makes up nearly a quarter of the entire EU budget of 168.7 billion euros for 2020. Literally almost a quarter of the entire EU budget is going towards subsidizing animal agriculture.
Now, what's really interesting is when we break that massive number down by specific food types, the disparity gets even more shocking. Beef and lamb received 8 billion euros in subsidies. Meanwhile, legumes, we're talking the lentils and beans that naturally fix nitrogen in the soil, reduce our reliance on synthetic fertilizers, and produce a tiny fraction of the greenhouse gas emissions, they received just 14 million. That means beef and lamb received over 580 times more funding than eco-friendly legumes.
And the data dump continues because the gap is just as jaw-dropping when we look at other categories.
The dairy industry received 16 billion euros in subsidies. Nuts and seeds, which actually help sequester carbon when they're grown on trees, got a mere 29 million. That is 500 times more funding directed toward dairy. The report even notes something pretty wild. Lard and tallow alone received more CAP subsidies than all fruit and vegetables combined.
So you kind of have to wonder, why does this happen? Why is the system so incredibly skewed? Well, a major reason is that CAP subsidies in recent decades have primarily been allocated on an area basis. Essentially, you get paid based on the amount of land you use. And animal agriculture has a massive footprint, taking up around 71% of EU agricultural land, much of it literally just to grow animal feed. But here's the catch. Despite taking up 71% of the land, animal-sourced foods only supply about 32% of the calories consumed in the EU. So the system is essentially rewarding sheer land use, not efficient food production. Now, maintaining this kind of unbalanced status quo doesn't usually happen by accident. According to the Food Rise EU report, powerful agribusiness lobbying plays a really significant role here. The report states that meat and dairy corporations poured millions of euros into lobbying the EU, estimating around 15 million euros between 2014 and 2020 alone. These efforts, driven through various trade groups, are aimed at protecting these massive subsidies and pushing back against environmental regulations that might shift Europe toward a more plant-rich diet. So the crucial point is, what does the science actually recommend we do to fix this? Enter the Eat Lancet Commission. This was a massive global scientific evaluation created by experts across 35 different countries. And they put forward a solution called the planetary health diet. It's exactly what it sounds like, a plant-rich diet with moderate amounts of animal-sourced foods specifically designed to support optimal human health without pushing our planet past its ecological boundaries.
The potential impact of adopting this diet is honestly incredible, and the science breaks it down into a few clear steps. Step 1. We shift our eating habits toward the planetary health diet. Step 2. By doing this, high-income regions could reduce agricultural production emissions by an estimated 61%. Step 3. This global shift could prevent up to 15 million premature deaths per year. It's a huge win for the climate and an absolutely massive win for public health.
But hey, this isn't just about high-level global statistics. It directly benefits the people living and working right here in the EU. If policies shifted to support this diet, agricultural incomes in the EU could actually increase by over 36% by 2050. We'd see 40% lower nitrogen emissions, which means cleaner air and cleaner rivers. And crucially, by using land to grow food for humans instead of feed for animals, the EU would dramatically reduce its reliance on imported feed, vastly improving our own local food security.
Let's move on and see how this builds into an absolutely enormous economic opportunity. The demand is totally already there. The European plant-based food and beverage market is projected to grow by over 50% by 2030. If the EU actively supported this transition, the alternative protein market has the potential to add 111 billion euros per year to the EU economy and support 414,000 high-quality jobs by 2040.
The really good news in all of this? A blueprint for making this transition already exists. The 2024 Strategic Dialogue on the Future of EU Agriculture, which successfully brought together farmers, businesses, and civil society, unanimously agreed on a path forward. They recommend repurposing these CAP subsidies to actually support dietary shifts. They suggest introducing a specific EU plant-based action plan. And, vitally, they recommend creating an agri-food just transition fund. This ensures livestock farmers aren't left behind, providing them with real financial support and training to transition over to more sustainable plant-based food production.
Which really brings us to the ultimate question we have to ask ourselves as these new policies are being drafted right now. We see the booming restaurants, we see the bustling markets, and we clearly know what the science says. The culture has moved on. So will our tax euros finally catch up to the reality of what's actually on our plates? Or will we continue to spend billions funding the food system of the past? It's an incredibly pivotal moment for Europe and definitely one we should all be watching very closely. Thanks for learning with us today on The Explainer, and we'll see you next time.